I'm Dave, founder of the Church of Ambrosia. We believe that mushrooms and entheogenic plants are really the core of all religions. Well, before I started the church, I was involved in the cannabis industry up until 2016. I actually started the first cannabis club in San Jose in 2009. And then over the next 7 years, worked with the city and worked with the state, fought a bunch of court cases, and tried to pass a legalization initiative that unfortunately didn't succeed, and Prop 64 passed. Well, after legalization passed in California and I kind of saw the whole industry being destroyed, I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And this opportunity in Oakland to open a church presented itself.
How and why did you seize the opportunity to open specifically a mushroom church?
Well, we actually started as a cannabis church. Shortly after we opened, Oakland passed their lowest priority for law enforcement for mushrooms, and that was kind of a sign for us that we needed to support other plants. So we ended up providing mushrooms. Out of the plants listed in Oakland's laws, they were kind of the safest for people to use on their own.
When did your first experience with mushrooms happen? Like when was your first religious experience with mushrooms?
Well, so of course, since we were going to start providing through the church, I had to try them and understand them. So the first time I did 2 grams, which was a good trip. It was just barely borderline anything, but it was, I felt the psychedelic effects that people talk about. Shortly after that, I decided to try the heroic dose, which is 5 grams. And that's what Terrence McKenna used to talk about. So I did 5 grams, and, it was a really good experience, but I came out repeating a loop that you need to learn how to breathe and you need to do more mushrooms. To me at the time, I was like, well, I know the lethal dose for mushrooms is somewhere around 4 pounds, so it won't hurt me to do more. I was just thinking, I'm breathing right now, so what do you know, mushrooms? But a few weeks later, I decided to try 10 grams. And that's where things kind of got a little weird. Another really intense experience, good experience, came out repeating the same loop. You need to learn how to breathe and you need to do more mushrooms. So this time I decided to Google how to breathe. And if you Google how to breathe, you'll find TED Talks and doctors talking about, as a society, how we've forgotten how to breathe. What's happened is because we're sitting down at desks and we're all conscious about our bellies, we're sucking in our bellies and we're breathing with the upper halves of our body. Well, the problem is we actually have a muscle for breathing, our diaphragm. And why these doctors are talking about it is because there's this new problem in society where old people are having breathing problems because their diaphragm is atrophied. We're literally having breathing problems because we've forgotten how to breathe. To me, that was where things got really weird, is how did I know that I didn't know how to breathe? And, from my perspective, there's only real 2 possibilities. One is that somehow the mushrooms allowed me to connect with something inside myself that was then able to communicate with me directly and say, this is something you need to learn. And if that's what happened, that would be pretty amazing. The other, which after all the high dose work that I've been doing, is really the one that I feel, is that there are actually entities on the other side. And they were trying to communicate with me because they knew this was the first lesson that I needed to learn before I moved forward.
And so you learned how to breathe, and you were still receiving messages from the other side to continue taking mushrooms. And you followed those messages, and what happened from there?
Yeah, so, I waited a couple weeks to let the tolerance kind of go away, because that's an important thing when you're doing these higher doses. And then a few weeks later, I did 15 grams. And this was another really amazing experience. This is when I actually started seeing the entities on the other side. Again, a really intense experience, but I came out of it in another loop, this time repeating, there's more knowledge to spread and do more mushrooms. Now, I was a little freaked out. I just did 15 grams of mushrooms and I was being told to do more mushrooms. which at the time I had never heard of anybody doing high-dose mushrooms. So I Googled high-dose mushrooms and came across this man, Kilindi Iyi. Unfortunately, Kalindi has passed away now, but at the time he was at a conference in Portland, and I was able to go to the conference. I get there, I walk in the door, registration desk is to my right, and standing right in front of me is Kalindi. And he's the first person to say anything to me, and he thinks he recognizes me. So just really weird experience. The conference was really good, though. It was really important for me to be there, and it was all about plants and the religious use of entheogenic plants. It was really just amazing to meet somebody who had been doing this sort of work for so long. Unfortunately, he wasn't as much of a mentor to me as I wish he could have been, because he passed away not too long after that. Just meeting somebody else that had done this and being able to talk to them about the experiences that I was having gave me more confidence to go further. So yeah, after coming back from the conference in Portland, I ended up doing 25 grams. This was another amazing experience. Met more entities and came back with another very clear message. This time it was, the journey has just begun and do more mushrooms. Actually, I think about a month after that, I did 30 grams, which was the highest dose that I'd ever done, or have ever done. And it was the first time that I actually had a sitter with me. Incredible experience. At one point, we're holding hands, me and my sitter, and other entities on the other side in a circle. Amazing experience. And I came out of that one with another very clear message. This time, everything will be okay. And fortunately, not do more mushrooms. When you get into what you're seeing in these higher doses, they're definitely what our ancestors would have considered gods. And some of them do represent themselves as gods. Now, I have a different perspective of what God is that goes beyond these entities, but that's what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing on the other side, are powerful entities with knowledge that want to teach us things.
And when you see God on the other side, what is that experience?
Well, so probably the best way to answer that is to go through the journey that I call my most religious experience. Definitely one of the most religious experiences. I was dragged through heaven and hell and all the dimensions in between. And I ended up in a space of pure light. There was nothing. I didn't exist. There was but a single consciousness. This was the consciousness of God. This journey was when I got really one of my deepest messages, which was a question. If you were God, what would you ask yourself? And it gets really deeper, because I was given some answers. So if you were God, the knower of everything, the creator of everything, what could you ask yourself? Now, this is where, during the journey, I experienced the Big Bang, the creation of space and time and all that exists. The answer to God's question, what am I, was to create us. God could not know what it is without everything existing. And now, interesting enough, this is like really core to most religions. We are all one. From a Christian perspective, we are all the sons of God. But these are really, you can't describe it as anything else but a spiritual experience.
So do you believe that we, and like the tenet of your religion, kind of the core of your religion, is that we are all fractions of this one consciousness?
Yeah, absolutely. The only way for God to understand itself was to create everything. And our mission is really to help God understand what it is.
Do you feel called or compelled to lead people to this experience?
That's a bit of a difficult question. For me, before doing mushrooms, I was pretty lost. I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing with my life. I didn't really know what to do. But after meeting these entities on the other side, they've told me that I need to help people understand this. I don't necessarily feel like I was chosen, but I can definitely understand how everything that I've been through in life has led me to this moment. Most religions tell you this is what you have to believe. This is what the book says. If you don't believe this, you're going to hell. That's really not what this is about. This is about experiencing what's on the other side and trying to understand it. And the mushrooms are a gateway to be able to do that. They're not the only gateway. People have been reaching these places through holotropic breath work, through meditation for hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of years. The mushrooms are just a very direct pathway to it. Overall, I think the big thing is understanding that you can survive through this stuff. So what the mushrooms show you are things that need to be dealt with. And in some cases, depending on what you're going through, they may be really difficult, but you will live through it. And if you try to understand what it's showing you, it'll help you move past that.
And I mean, what would you say to someone who's like, nah, he's just glorifying his drug use and he's making this shit up?
If you really don't believe, you can do it yourself. These can be extremely terrifying experiences. This is definitely not for fun, and you wouldn't be doing it unless you really feel drawn to understanding what's on the other side. There's a huge difference between being told what to believe and actually experiencing it yourself. And I really, truly believe that if everybody could understand that we are all one, the world would be a better place.